Welcome back. President Joe Biden missing a June 18th deadline to declassify all information related to the suspected Wuhan lab leak. That was yesterday. Now, the deadline was imposed after Congress unanimously passed the COVID-19 Origin Act back in March. Now, the law does not impose any sanctions for not meeting the deadline. However, the Biden administration did not release a report requested from Congress, so there may be political consequences from Republican lawmakers. And it is Kentucky Senator Rand Paul pushing for transparency and also reforms with some of this information that has been classified, telling Fox, quote, if we can get those records and actually put it out there for all the public to see that the first person that got sick was a scientist at the lab, then it's a done deal. He says the gain of function research is the biggest danger to mankind, saying the United States should not fund it at home or abroad. Paul also saying the blame equally should go not only to Chinese authorities, but Anthony Fauci and all those who advocated for this. Of course, it was just last week. It was reported that there is significant evidence that indicates COVID-19 had infected several Chinese scientists and accidentally escaped from the Wuhan Institute of Virology. And according to the GAO report also released just days ago, it confirmed U.S. taxpayer dollars awarded from the National Institutes of Health and the USAID were ultimately used for research by entities in China from 2014 to 2021, including the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Joining us now to discuss this and more, former Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, Dr. Ben Carson. Dr. Carson, great to have you in today. It's good to see you.
Thank you. Nice to be with you again.
So obviously people want to know the truth. We deserve to know the truth. The Twitter files show just how the government was suppressing information during COVID. But now with Biden's administration missing this declass deadline, you know, we see Blinken going over to China. Some say maybe there's more to this than we know, with the Biden family being investigated, possibly being compromised. China. What is your take, Dr. Carson, on this past deadline and how our government is handling it now?
Well, it's interesting. You know, in the beginning, the Trump administration saw there was smoke and, you know, called people's attention to it. But the media just completely suppressed it and demonized people who said that there was any other theory other than it coming from a market nearby. And as the evidence began to get greater and greater, you couldn't just sweep it under the rug without a big lump appearing on the rug. So, you know, now they're starting to say, oh, well, you know, maybe there's something, but they're still not coming across with all the information. And there seems to be a reason to protect the Chinese and protect the reputation of the Chinese. Why are they more concerned about that than they are about the American people? And I commend Senator Paul for staying on this and, you know, pushing for exposure of all this material.
And as always, following the money there, a big link to all of this. I want to get your take on something that kind of erupted over the weekend. So presidential candidate RFK Jr. on the very popular Joe Rogan podcast. But then he was accused of spreading misinformation. Dr. Peter Hotez says Spotify has stopped even sort of trying to stem Joe Rogan's vaccine misinformation. And you see right here, Rogan responds saying, if you're claiming it's misinformation, what RFK Jr. is saying, here's $100,000, come debate. No time limit, goes to your charity. But as we're, you know, not surprised here, the doctor doesn't take up Rogan's opportunity here. No, he goes on MSNBC, and this is what he says.
I offered to come and go on Joe Rogan again. I've been on a couple of times and have that discussion with him, but not to turn it into the Jerry Springer show with having RFK Jr. on.
I mean, you're a doctor here. He's the one who's saying it's misinformation, yet he doesn't want to talk about it. It's like when you want to question the science, they say, oh, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to debate. Some of this just seems, it just doesn't be helpful at all to get to any of the facts the longer this persists, Dr. Carson.
Absolutely. Well, we've seen this time and time again, just dismissing rather than getting involved in a debate and, you know, being able to express yourselves. And this seems to be a tactic that we see a lot from the left, calling people names, refusing to talk to them. It sounds like President Biden doesn't even want to get on a debate stage with RFK. You know, these are real problems. America has been a place where there has been openness, there's been transparency, That's one of the things that provides the liberty that we have. And when you see communist regimes, socialist regimes, what do? They shut down the discussion. Anybody who disagrees with them is either ridiculed or persecuted. And we see ourselves moving in that direction. And we need to be very careful. We're on the brink of turning into something else if we're not vigilant at this point.
It is. It's so frightening. And, as far as change, a lot of people say, well, nothing's going to change until the election. And we see here there's a new CDC director. President Biden has put in this woman, Dr. Mandy Cohen. She was the secretary of the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services from 2017 until last year. She's held some health-related jobs at 2 federal agencies. She will replace Dr. Rochelle Walensky, who stepped down. So are you expecting anything to change at the CDC with this new person, Dr. Mandy Cohen? What do you know about her?
Well, I certainly hope so. She's relatively young. I think she's only 44 years old. But she's already had experience in a number of executive positions. So let's wait and see what happens. But there's no question that the CDC, the NIH, the government institutes of health have lost a lot of credibility. And we need to start building it back as soon as possible. And I hope maybe this administration recognizes that. I don't know if they do or not. We'll wait and see.
A lot of distrust when it comes to the 3-letter agencies. Because you're a member of Trump's cabinet, I do want to get your thoughts on the indictment here. I mean, there's a new poll by JL Partners we have where it says 50% of people say the indictment was politically motivated. Final thoughts on this, Dr. Carson, of where we stand as a nation?
Well, again, America is the land of freedom and justice, and we need to maintain that. Now, Hillary did things, others have done things. That's not the issue. The issue is, are we being fair? And when we have a situation where we have people who can arbitrarily decide, this person we're going to persecute, this person we're not going to persecute, how is that fair? That's like a banana republic. And we need to bring some consistency to the way that we do things. And yes, there's an election coming up, but we really need to act on this before that. I don't know how long this republic can last with this kind of corruption going on.
Sobering words there, Dr. Ben Carson. Good to see you, sir. Thank you.